Internationally today, President Trump claims he had no clue that White House aides were so afraid, apparently, by how he might react were he to see the ship named in part after the late Senator John McCain, a Navy flyer during Vietnam and a former prisoner of war. They asked Navy officials to keep the USS John McCain out of the president's sights while he was in Japan last week. Asked about the stunning request from his own aides, one that might suggest a remarkably fragile and immature temperament, the president said this.
Now, somebody did it because they thought I didn't like them, okay? And they were well-meaning, I will say. I didn't know anything about it. I would never have done that.
Two naval officials confirmed the story first broken by the Wall Street Journal to CNN, and saying once Navy leadership heard about it, they dismissed the plan to block the name of the ship or to move the ship entirely. As CNN's Alex Marquardt now reports, those close to Senator McCain, who died last August, are stunned.
Thank you for letting us do this topic first.
Unbearable grief is how John McCain's daughter says President Trump's continued attacks on her deceased father make her feel.
It's impossible to go through the grief process when my father, who's been dead 10 months, is constantly in the news cycle because the president is so obsessed with the fact that he's never going to be a great man like he was.
Even in death, the president continues to the late Arizona senator.
I was not a big fan of John McCain in any way, shape, or form.
But he denies going so far as to demand that the USS John S. McCain be moved so that he couldn't see it during his trip to Japan.
But I would never do a thing like that. Now, somebody did it because they thought I didn't like them, okay? And they were well-meaning, I will say.
Well-meaning, appearing to want to please the boss. Officials from the Navy say that the White House military office emailed back and forth with some Navy officials planning for the president's trip, including one email obtained by CNBC stipulating USS John McCain needs to be out of sight. Naval officials confirmed to CNN that the White House asked the ship be moved or obscured. Upon hearing about it, one official said Navy leadership told them to, quote, knock it off. Instead of moving it for the president, the Wall Street Journal, which broke the story, reported that a tarp was hung to cover the name. But the officials say it was there for repairs and taken down before the president arrived. The acting Secretary of Defense says he never issued any orders regarding the ship.
I never authorized, I never approved any action around the movement or activity regarding that ship. And furthermore, I would never dishonor the memory of a great American patriot like Senator McCain.
The president has never shared that feeling. In speeches, even as McCain was dying, and then well after, the president has attacked McCain for blocking him from repealing Obamacare. This, of course, after then-candidate Trump denied that the former Navy pilot who was shot down in Vietnam, imprisoned for 5 years, and tortured was a hero.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
Now, Jake, the question is who wrote those emails telling the 7th Fleet to move the USS John McCain out of sight. It's certainly not hard, as you can imagine, for the White House to figure out who that was, but it remains to be seen whether anything will happen to them, especially when the president is out there praising their intentions. As for the crew on the USS McCain, whose namesake is worshipped in the Navy, the president says he owes them no apology. Jake.
Alex Marquardt, thanks so much. Mike, it doesn't look like we have any evidence that President Trump knew about this. But what does it say about President Trump that staffers thought that the sight of a ship named after John McCain's grandfather and father and him would cause distress on an international trip?
It tells you that they were worried about it, that they thought that maybe something like this has happened before, and particularly with John McCain, who clearly is still living in the president's head. What I would be really interested to know, actually, Pat Shanahan is having a confirmation hearing next month in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee.
The Defense Secretary.
This is the acting Defense Secretary for confirmation of the permanent position. It'd be interesting to hear what he says at that hearing, if he's asked about this issue, if he's asked if he knew, because the Wall Street Journal has said that he was aware of this order. He's claiming to us and to others that he was not. That'd be something interesting, particularly because Shanahan is sort of on shaky ground, even in this Republican-controlled Senate. A lot of the Republicans on that committee not entirely thrilled with his pick.
It's just stunning.
It is
John McCain
stunning.
died in August.
Yes.
Here we are today. We had a clip in that piece. Today, Donald Trump talking about how he didn't like John McCain, he wasn't a fan of John McCain, et cetera. And while that was running, you were going, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because that's the. I mean, he's dead. I mean, my God, have some respect, and and also that clip of Meghan McCain, having grieved my own father for the last 3 years. I can't imagine the pain that it must cause her every single time. This president does not pass up a single opportunity to trash John McCain, and I can't imagine how painful that must be for his family. And yes, there's no, I mean, as much as he's telling us to move on from the Mueller report, you want to say, well, why don't you move on? And I can't imagine having worked for presidents and senators and all kinds of people, having to work for someone who is so thin-skinned. You would dare to try to ask the military to move a ship? I mean, it's insane. And as you pointed out, he took another jab at him when he really didn't even need to.
And he took another jab at him, this one subtle, when he put out a tweet mourning the loss, the death of Senator Thad Cochran, who died earlier today. He tweeted, very sad to hear the news on the passing of my friend Senator Thad Cochran. He was a real senator with incredible values. Even flew back to Senate from Mississippi for an important health care vote when he was desperately ill. Thad never let our country or me down. Unmistakable that he's suggesting there that Senator John McCain did let the country and him down with a different vote on health care. Why do you think McCain bothers him so much? Do you agree with Meghan McCain's assessment that it's because he knows he can never be like John McCain?
Yeah, and could never have the respect, I think, that John McCain had. The narcissism is extraordinary. At the end of that quote about the tweet about Thad Cochran, he says, he never let the country, parens, or me, close parens,
right.
down. What does he have to do with it? What does Trump have to do with it? Thad Cochran was a senator for, 35 years or something like that? Trump was president for the last 2 years of Cochran's being a senator. It has nothing to do with Trump. He can't just have a nice tweet saying thank you for your service, thank the man for his service, and after he dies, and he has to bring himself into it. But it does turn out that Trump is very easily triggered. He's more easily triggered than some undergraduate at Oberlin or something. No offense to the
Right.
CNN.
You're in trouble
Huge
now.
number of CNN viewers went to Oberlin.
The move of his staffers to move the ship or whatever they wanted to do to hide the ship is part of a long pattern. The New York Times reported that Mick Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff, told aides not to discuss the Russia probe in front of the president to avoid working him up. Politico detailed how aides tried to make sure Trump only has access to positive newspaper articles. I mean, they really try to shield him. I mean, the presidency is a bubble no matter what, and you're surrounded by sycophants no matter what. But this seems to be taking it to a new level.
Yeah, I mean, the president has a very fragile ego. I mean, he's deeply insecure. In terms of the John McCain thing, it does seem like he's jealous of this man's accomplishment, his service to the country, his sacrifice, the idea that he could have escaped being a POW for so long if he was able to trade on his family name. He was able to do that. He declined to do that. You obviously saw the president trade on his wealth and his maybe family name and getting out of going to Vietnam. So, yeah, I mean, but it is striking that there is sort of, this bubble around the president, staffers who are paid by taxpayers whose job is to protect the president and kind of insulate him and protect the fragility of his ego. This was a really stunning story that I think is a kind of disturbing window into the president's psyche and just how insecure he is.
And that clip of him saying, I prefer people who weren't captured, which is smearing not just Senator McCain,
Right,
but all prisoners of war. That was 2015. This 4 years later. It remains stunningly obscene
Yeah, and
that
listen,
he said that.
He said that in 1990.